Before the Great Pyramids pierced the skies of Egypt, before the philosophers of Greece pondered the universe, a forgotten land between two rivers gave birth to human civilization itself. Welcome to Mesopotamia, from the Greek words meaning, the land between rivers, nestled between the Tigris and Euphrates in what is now Iraq, southeastern Syria, and parts of Turkey and Iran. It was here, over 6,000 years ago, that humankind took its first steps toward modern life. In this land of fertile soil and flowing waters, nomads became farmers. Farmers became villagers. Villages became cities. The first kings ruled. The first armies marched. The first written words were carved into clay tablets. Here, the Sumerians raised towering temples called ziggurats, developed a writing system known as cuneiform, and crafted the first known laws, literature, and mathematics. The Akkadians forged the first empire. The Babylonians, under King Hammurabi, gave us one of the oldest legal codes. The Assyrians mastered warfare and built libraries to preserve knowledge. This land was not just a crossroads of rivers, but a crossroads of ideas, where writing, astronomy, architecture, and government took shape. Though the ruins of Mesopotamia now lie silent beneath the sand, their legacy lives on, in the way we tell time, govern society, build cities, and record our thoughts. In this full-length documentary, we'll uncover the incredible story of Mesopotamia, so let's start without delay. At the heart of the ancient Near East lies a stretch of land historians call the Fertile Crescent, a curved region of lush valleys and abundant rivers in an otherwise arid world. Within this crescent, between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, flourished a land unlike any other, Mesopotamia. Thousands of years ago, these rivers flowed with life. Each spring, they flooded the surrounding plains, leaving behind a rich layer of silt, dark, fertile soil perfect for farming. Around 10,000 BCE, in the aftermath of the last ice age, early humans in Mesopotamia transitioned from roaming hunter-gatherers to settled farmers. This shift, known as the Neolithic Revolution, changed everything. No longer dependent on wild game, people cultivated barley, wheat, lentils, and domesticated animals like sheep and goats. With food came stability. With stability came growth. Small communities began to emerge, clusters of mud brick homes, granaries, and open-air markets. By 600 BCE, villages had grown along the rivers, and with them, the first signs of organized life, irrigation canals, shared granaries, religious shrines. People began to shape the land deliberately, guiding water through canals and building levees to control flooding. These weren't just farmers, they were engineers. Over time, competition and cooperation between settlements led to something revolutionary. The rise of cities. The southern region of Mesopotamia, known as Sumer, became a hub for early urban development. Cities like Eridu, Uruk, and Ur emerged, complete with temples, marketplaces, and public buildings. These were city-states, independent political units ruled by a king or priest-king and surrounded by farmland. Social roles became more defined. Priests managed religious temples and interpreted the will of the gods. Artisans crafted tools, pottery, and jewelry. Farmers worked the land, and merchants traded surplus goods across regions. Religion played a central role. Sumerians believed their cities were gifts from the gods, each protected by a specific deity. Towering temples called ziggurats were built to honor these gods, giant, stepped platforms that rose above the city skyline. Trade began to stretch beyond local regions. Mesopotamian merchants exchanged grain, textiles, and tools for timber from Lebanon, copper from Oman, and precious stones from the Indus Valley. As cities grew, life became more complex. How could leaders manage food supplies, track trade, and resolve disputes? The answer came through one of humanity's most important inventions, writing. But that chapter is just beginning. The transformation of Mesopotamia from a land of scattered farms to a network of thriving cities marked a turning point in human history. This wasn't just survival. It was civilization, a civilization that would lead the world into the age of kings, empires, laws, and legacy. As the Sumerian city-states flourished in southern Mesopotamia, something powerful was rising to the north, a new force that would change history forever. Around 2334 BCE, a man named Sargon of Akkad rose to power in the city of Akkad. His vision was not just to rule a city, but to unite all of Mesopotamia under one banner. Sargon's origins were humble, according to legend, a cupbearer to the king of Kish, abandoned at birth and raised in secret. But his destiny would be anything but ordinary. Through cunning, ambition, and military genius, Sargon conquered the Sumerian city-states and forged the world's first empire, the Akkadian Empire. For the first time in history, dozens of city-states, from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean Sea, were brought together under a single ruler. Sargon established a centralized government with appointed governors, tax systems, and a standing army. He also standardized weights and measures, creating consistency across regions. But empire is more than territory, it's ideas, culture, and identity. The Akkadians embraced the achievements of the Sumerians, especially their cuneiform script, and adapted it for their own Semitic Akkadian language. Royal inscriptions were carved into stone tablets, documenting Sargon's victories and divine right to rule. These weren't just records, they were messages of power meant to endure. Under Akkadian rule, trade expanded beyond Mesopotamia. Goods from Anatolia, the Indus Valley, and the Arabian Peninsula flowed through Akkadian markets. With wealth came grander projects, temples, palaces, and infrastructure that connected the vast empire. But no empire lasts forever. After Sargon's death, his successors, including his grandson Naram-Sin, faced growing resistance. Naram-Sin declared himself king of the four quarters of the earth, the first Mesopotamian ruler to claim divine status. He led successful campaigns and expanded the empire further, yet internal revolts, famine, and external pressures began to erode the Akkadian grip. By around 2150 BCE, the empire crumbled under attacks from Gutian tribes in the Zagros Mountains. The once mighty empire dissolved, its cities reclaimed by local powers. But the idea of a unified Mesopotamia, of empire, would never die. The Akkadian Empire had shown what was possible: one ruler, one language of power, one system of control. It set the model for future empires across the world, from Babylon and Persia to Rome and beyond. Though Akkad itself faded from memory, lost to time and shifting sands, its legacy was immortal. In the ruins, in the tablets, in the very idea of empire, the Akkadians carved their mark on history, and in doing so, they pushed Mesopotamia into a new age, an age of laws, conquests, and cultural fusion. As the dust settled from the fall of the Akkadian Empire, a new power began to rise in central Mesopotamia, a city that would shine brighter than any before it. That city was Babylon, located along the Euphrates River. Babylon began as a small town. But by 1792 BCE, under the rule of an ambitious and skilled leader named Hammurabi, it would become the beating heart of the ancient world. Hammurabi wasn't just a warrior king, he was a visionary. He expanded Babylon's territory through diplomacy and strategic conquest, unifying much of Mesopotamia under his reign. But his greatest achievement wasn't military. It was legal. In an age when justice was often arbitrary, Hammurabi created one of the world's earliest written legal systems, the Code of Hammurabi, a collection of 282 laws carved into a towering black stone stele for all to see. At the top of the stele, Hammurabi is depicted standing before Shamash, the god of justice, receiving the divine authority to rule and judge. These laws covered every aspect of life: trade and contracts, marriage and inheritance, property rights, crimes and punishments. The code introduced the idea that the law was above the ruler, that it was permanent and public. Some of its punishments were harsh by modern standards, the famous eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth principle. Yet it also protected the weak, widows, and orphans. For example, if a builder constructed a house that collapsed and killed the owner, the builder could be put to death. If a merchant defrauded a buyer, they would be fined. If a wife was found blameless in divorce, she kept her dowry and returned to her father's house. Though rigid, the code brought order and consistency to a diverse empire. It ensured that Babylonian society was governed not by whim, but by law. But Hammurabi's contributions extended beyond the courtroom. Under his rule, Babylon became a thriving economic, cultural, and spiritual center. The city was adorned with grand temples, including the Asagila, dedicated to Marduk, the supreme deity of Babylon. Babylonian astronomers charted the stars and planets, developing early calendars based on lunar cycles. schools taught cuneiform writing and mathematics, producing scribes who recorded everything from tax records to epic poetry. Babylon's wealth came not only from conquest but from trade. The city stood at a crossroads of major trade routes, where goods flowed in from India, Anatolia, and Egypt. Art flourished too, in glazed bricks, jewelry, cylinder seals, and detailed sculptures. After Hammurabi's death, his successors struggled to maintain the empire's strength. Babylon's power waned, and Mesopotamia once again fragmented into rival kingdoms, but Hammurabi's name, and his code, would live on. Thousands of years later, his laws were rediscovered in the ruins of Susa, where a copy had been taken by invaders. Today, the Code of Hammurabi is displayed at the Louvre Museum in Paris, an enduring symbol of the idea that civilization is built not only on power, but on justice. Babylon's influence didn't end with Hammurabi. In later centuries, the city would rise again under kings like Nebuchadnezzar II, becoming one of the most iconic cities of the ancient world. But it was under Hammurabi that Babylon made its greatest mark, not just as a city of wealth and splendor, but as the birthplace of legal thought. In a world still learning how to govern itself, Hammurabi offered a bold vision, a vision where law is written, where justice is consistent, and where even kings are held accountable, a vision that laid the groundwork for all legal systems to come. In the north of Mesopotamia, beyond the fertile lowlands, a formidable power began to rise, one that would become known for its discipline, innovation, and sheer ruthlessness. This was Assyria, the empire that turned war into an art and dominance into a science. Its earliest roots date back to around 2000 BCE, centered on the city of Assur, named after their chief god. But it wasn't until 1,000 years later that Assyria would explode onto the world stage. By 900 BCE, the Assyrians had transformed from a regional kingdom into the ancient world's most efficient military machine. Under kings like Ashurnasirpal II, Tiglath-Pileser III, Sargon II, and Sennacherib, the Assyrians built an empire that stretched from the Persian Gulf to Egypt. Their military success was no accident. The Assyrians developed organized, professional armies with specialized units, archers, cavalry, chariots, and infantry. Engineers who built battering rams, siege towers, and even bridges. They pioneered psychological warfare. Before battles, they sent terrifying messages. After victories, they often deported conquered peoples, a brutal but effective way to prevent rebellion. Their stone reliefs proudly displayed scenes of conquest, kings slaying lions, cities burning, prisoners marching in chains. These images weren't just decoration, they were propaganda, designed to inspire awe and fear. Yet for all their brutality, the Assyrians were more than just warriors, they were administrators and builders. The empire was divided into provinces, each ruled by a governor loyal to the king. Roads and postal systems connected the farthest corners of the empire, and taxes poured into the capital cities. One of their greatest capitals was Nineveh, a sprawling metropolis with palaces, parks, and temples. It was here that King Ashurbanipal built his magnificent library of Nineveh, the largest collection of texts in the ancient world, holding over 30,000 clay tablets. Among them were mythological texts, medical records, astronomical data, and even the Epic of Gilgamesh. The Assyrians saw knowledge as power, not just to dominate, but to preserve their greatness. However, their empire was built on fear. And fear breeds enemies. By the late 7th century BCE, Assyria had grown too large, too brutal, and too unstable. In 612 BCE, a powerful alliance of Babylonians and Medes attacked Nineveh. After a long siege, the city fell, looted, burned, and left in ruins. The Assyrian Empire collapsed almost overnight, but its legacy endured, in the art of governance, in the architecture of their cities, in the library that preserved so much of ancient Mesopotamian knowledge. The Assyrians were both feared and admired. They were masters of war, yes, but also masters of state, of innovation, and of enduring legacy. They left behind not just a trail of conquest, but a footprint of organization, culture, and imperial ambition that empires from Persia to Rome would later emulate. In the rise and fall of Assyria, we see the power, and peril, of empire at its most extreme. From the ashes of Assyria, a once great city rose again to reclaim the crown of Mesopotamia. Babylon, long overshadowed, now entered its golden age under a powerful new dynasty. In 626 BCE, the Chaldean leader Nabopolassar led a successful rebellion against Assyrian rule and founded the Neo-Babylonian Empire. But it was his son, Nebuchadnezzar II, who would transform Babylon into one of the most legendary cities in history. Reigning from 605 to 562 BCE, Nebuchadnezzar expanded the empire from the Persian Gulf to the borders of Egypt. He fortified Babylon with immense walls, rebuilt sacred temples, and constructed the dazzling Ishtar Gate, adorned with blue-glazed bricks and golden lions. The city was laid out in grand fashion, wide roads, lush gardens, towering ziggurats, and canals flowing with water from the Euphrates. According to ancient sources, Nebuchadnezzar also built the fabled Hanging Gardens of Babylon, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, said to have been created for his homesick wife from the mountains of Media. Under Neo-Babylonian rule, science and art flourished once again. Babylonian astronomers meticulously tracked celestial movements, creating star catalogues and accurate lunar calendars. Priests maintained the temple rituals, scholars preserved ancient texts, and craftsmen pushed architecture to new heights. Babylon also played a dramatic role on the world stage. In 586 BCE, Nebuchadnezzar conquered Jerusalem, destroyed its temple, and began the Babylonian captivity, a pivotal moment in Jewish history that would echo through centuries. But glory is fleeting. After Nebuchadnezzar's death, the empire weakened under internal strife. In 539 BCE, Babylon fell to Cyrus the Great of Persia without a fight. The gates opened peacefully, and the last native Mesopotamian empire was no more, yet Babylon's name endured, not just as a place, but as a symbol of brilliance, beauty, and the heights of human achievement. The Neo-Babylonian revival was the final, breathtaking chapter in Mesopotamia's long and luminous story. Beyond their towering ziggurats, powerful kings, and mighty empires, the people of Mesopotamia made lasting contributions that continue to shape the modern world. This ancient civilization didn't just invent the tools of governance and conquest, they laid the foundation of culture, science, and legacy. Let's begin with one of their most profound achievements, writing. Around 3200 BCE, the Sumerians developed cuneiform, a system of wedge-shaped symbols pressed into clay tablets using a reed stylus. At first, it was used to record simple transactions, grain, livestock, taxes. But soon, it evolved into a rich script capable of expressing complex ideas. Through cuneiform, Mesopotamians wrote hymns, treaties, legal codes, and most famously, literature. Among their masterpieces is the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest surviving works of fiction. In it, a heroic king journeys through grief, friendship, love, and the search for immortality, a story as human today as it was 4,000 years ago. Education was vital. Scribes were trained from a young age in special schools called adubas, where they copied and memorized hundreds of signs and texts. These scribes preserved knowledge across generations, becoming essential to every temple, palace, and city. In science, Mesopotamians were pioneers. They observed the movements of stars and planets, creating detailed celestial charts and lunar calendars. Their system of time, based on the number 60, gave us the 60-minute hour, the 60-second minute, and 360 degrees in a circle. In mathematics, they understood multiplication, division, square roots, and even used place-value systems. Their inventions included the wheel, which revolutionized transport and pottery, the plow, enhancing agriculture. Irrigation canals, which turned desert into farmland. Mesopotamians also advanced medicine. Their doctors diagnosed diseases, performed surgeries, and prescribed remedies using herbs, rituals, and incantations, often combining science with spiritual belief. Religion permeated every part of life. Temples weren't just places of worship, they were centers of learning, storage, and economy. They believed in a vast pantheon of gods: Anu, god of the heavens; Enlil, god of air and storms; Inanna, Ishtar, goddess of love and war; Marduk, who rose to prominence with Babylon. These deities shaped myths, festivals, and political legitimacy. Kings claimed divine guidance and built temples to honor their gods, but it wasn't all about kings and priests. In everyday life, Mesopotamians raised families, farmed fields, traded goods, built homes, played music, and brewed beer. They created board games, musical instruments, and intricate jewelry. They loved stories, debated ethics, and dreamed under the same stars we see today. Their legacy, it lives in the written word, the rule of law, and the science of the sky. It's echoed in the architecture of cities, the structure of governments, and the foundations of education. The achievements of Mesopotamia traveled across time, to Persia, to Greece, to Rome, and into every corner of the modern world. Though the rivers have shifted and the cities lie in ruins, the Mesopotamians never truly disappeared. Their spirit survives in every civilization that came after, in every library, every classroom, every observatory, and every court of law. The ancient voice of Mesopotamia still speaks. In the land between rivers, humanity planted the seeds of civilization. From simple farming villages emerged mighty cities. From oral tradition came writing. From chaos, order. In Mesopotamia, we find the first laws, the first libraries, the first epic stories, and the first empires. Its people turned mud and reeds into temples that reached the sky. They tracked the heavens to create calendars. They etched words in clay so thoughts could outlive generations. They faced floods, droughts, invasions, and yet they endured, adapted, and rose again and again. Sumer, Akkad, Babylon, Assyria, each left its imprint on the pages of time, and though the rivers have changed course and the ziggurats have crumbled, the ideas born in Mesopotamia continue to shape the world. Every time we glance at a clock, calculate a triangle, write a contract, or look up at the stars and wonder, we carry forward their legacy. The story of Mesopotamia is not just the story of an ancient land, it is the story of us all, of what we once were, of what we dared to become, and of the brilliance, ambition, and resilience that lies within the human spirit. Thank you for joining us on this journey through time. If you enjoyed this documentary, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the civilizations that shaped our world.